Hello and welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel once a week. It chooses the horror movie and they discuss it, but today we're actually going to do a bonus episode and cover Scream 6. If you have any interest in listening to any of our other thoughts on Screams 1 through 5, you can go back and listen. We covered all of them. Joe and I have done every single one together. First one was with Eric as well, but today we are going to be covering Scream 6, which was directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olphin and Tyler Gillett. I'm your co-host, Alec, and with me today, returning to finish Scream 6 and the series, or franchise, I should call it, is Joe Testa. Welcome back, Joe.
Thank you, sir.
And also joining us is Andy Danish. So welcome back, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
This is actually a really big treat because obviously, Joe and I, we've talked about all the Scream movies together, and just hearing your insight, Joe, it's awesome. But we all three of us just saw this movie, which was crazy. I don't think I've ever seen a movie with you, obviously, Joe, but to be able to see a movie, do a podcast, all three of us together, this is really exciting for me. So thank you guys for joining, and I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. So what are we thinking? What are we thinking?
Who wants to go first?
I mean, Joe, I think you should go first.
Well, it was funny. We all kind of, I felt like we kind of agreed to keep our first impressions kind of minimal when we were walking out of the theater. So I really don't know too much about your opinions on the movie. So I'm really looking forward to it as well. Although, Andy, you had like one really good point as we were leaving that I felt just kind of nailed it, and I'm sure we're going to get into it later. But should we start at the opening scene?
Yeah, so I guess we'll kind of reveal our feelings as we go.
Okay, do you want to do just broad impressions to start off?
I don't know. I feel like it would help a little bit just to know like where everybody they sit on it right now, and then we can kind of like, okay, so I know, I don't know if they agree with me, but
So I'll start us off. We all looked at each other when the movie was over, and I said I was pretty positive on it, and I still am mostly positive on the movie. I think it was a good time. I think it was, I think it's a crowd pleasing movie. We saw this with a very lively crowd, and I want to talk a little bit about that more later. But when I got home, I felt like I just ate a really big meal. And it tasted good, but it didn't quite nourish me, if that makes sense. So an enjoyable time, but with some caveats.
Yeah, no, I definitely can relate to that. But Andy, why don't you go ahead and give us your first impressions on the movie?
I mean, first off, that opening scene, when the guy unmasks himself, and I'm like, oh, it's the bully from Spider-Man: Homecoming. The actor plays Flash Thompson also in the newer Spider-Man movies.
Oh.
But also, the kills were fun. I enjoyed it. I think that the movie overall, I think if we're sharing thoughts on the whole movie and not just the opening scene, I think there were times where it was very ambitious, and I think that it didn't always deliver on what it was setting up. I thought overall the kills were fun. I enjoyed those. But there was just too much time between each of the kills. I wanted it to be a little bit faster paced. I think they were trying to establish the friendships, and they're trying to establish the chemistry, and, each of these people have their own quirks and baggage. But I'm like, it's kind of just dragging away from the moitas, the killing. And I'm like, come on, I want some slicing and dicing going on here. Why am I sitting here listening to people, prattle on? That's not what I came here for.
It was a lot of close calls. I definitely agree with you there. Yeah, when the kills did come, they weren't really kills, a lot of them. Yeah, my initial thoughts, Joe, is almost like reversed of yours. Like, I left, I was kind of like pissed off. Not pissed off, but just not as thrilled as I thought I was going to be. And then I left, and I was like, that was kind of cool. And okay, that wasn't terrible. Oh, I guess that did happen in the third one or whatever. So, like, I started coming around to it more, and I still have a few major gripes, but overall I definitely have come around to a more positive feeling about it than I did initially when I first saw it. Also, this is in 3D. I didn't know they had a 3D version of this. Did you guys hear about that?
Yeah, I heard about that. I thought that was strange. I guess since Avatar 2 came out, 3D movies are back.
It just, yeah, James Cameron announced it. He's like, they're back. We're back.
I mean, is it the same type of 3D that Friday the 13th Part 3 was? Where you had like the fake, 3D glasses, cheap ones, and then it's like, oh, watch out for this broom handle. It's going to hit you in the face. That type of 3D.
I don't know. I wanted to know. That's the thing.
Yeah, there didn't seem to be any 3D gimmicks in the movie. Like, not that I noticed anyway. There was nothing like in Friday the 13th Part 3. But if they were giving out those old-fashioned glasses, I might have insisted on seeing it that way.
I mean, I didn't even know it had a 3D version until now, and now I'm thinking, like, yeah, it wouldn't have made sense. There was nothing. Like, yeah, Friday the 13th Part 3 is so egregious in what parts are 3D. It's like, that didn't stand out at all in this one. So, okay, so it seems like we're all leaning more towards positive, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the kills were fun in my mind, and I think everything in between, though, was kind of forgettable. That's my takeaway.
Okay.
Can I go back to the opening scene for a moment? Because I feel like the opening scenes in Scream movies, for me anyway, are almost like a harbinger of how I'm going to feel about the movie. Like, if I go through my Scream movie ranking, it's the same as like how I would rank their opening scenes. And this started off very shaky for me. Just for me personally, for a series that really prides itself on being smarter than old slasher movies, this wasn't clicking for me. This whole kind of luring Samara Weaving into this alley, it felt beneath this franchise. It felt like something from like an urban legend sequel. And if it ended there, it would have been a big disappointment. But I did like how they did kind of switch up the formula, and the killer's unmasked, and then we get this whole extended scene where this killer is like actually killed by our main antagonist. So that stuff was all interesting, but the whole lead up, I'll say, it wasn't my favorite.
I completely agree with you, Joe. Yeah, I just want to say I'm offended by how good looking Samara Weaving is, so I'm just gonna throw that out there. She's absolutely gorgeous. She's beautiful. But anyways,
and then are we to believe she's on some kind of Tinder date and she's very jittery and nervous? Just from the get go, I was very confused, and everything felt just very awkward.
Yeah, she's like a teacher. But yeah, so she goes out into the street. Yeah, she's coaxed out by the first call too. We don't get a GhostFace voice, which that's the first time I think that's ever happened in the series, right?
Besides in Scream 3 when he's able to change his voice with that magic box.
Oh, right. Yeah, so it's not GhostFace voice, it's the guy, it's the killer's voice, we're assuming, and he lures her out to the street, kills her, but we're expecting the Scream 6 thing to pop up or whatever. But I think that was a good indicator that we're like, okay, this isn't actually how it's going to start. Because no other Scream movie has ever not opened with like a whoosh, and then all of a sudden the logo, the title card or whatever. But the thing I really liked about it was we got to follow Ghostface. That's the pseudo Ghostface or whatever, because that's never happened either. It's usually get a slice, then it cuts to Sydney or it cuts to Sam or whoever it's going to be. This one really follows him for a while. He gets to interact with Tara for a second. So I thought that was a kind of cool little diversion.
I agree. That was pretty unique. And I think that it was an okay way to open it. I felt like there was a good amount of tension at least built up. So it wasn't like some flat conversation or some sort of like casual throwaway conversation. I think that because over the years with the franchise, it started branding itself as like being satirical and like sort of like tongue-in-cheek, and it was doing it. But when it first came out, like the first Scream, second Scream, kind of did it during a time period where slashers were kind of on their way out, like traditional slashers like Halloween or Friday the 13th. All those slashers were kind of like, falling in popularity. And, Wes Craven had a huge hand during the time period when slashers were big because, Nightmare on Elm Street was his baby. So then the fact that he kind of reinvigorated that genre with Scream was something. And I think now it's the fact that they're kind of doing the same thing over and over again when what they did the first time kind of already had that impact. So I think if they're following the same beats, the same formula like they did, then it was less impactful, which is why I think the tongue-in-cheek scenes in between the kills kind of fell flat, because it's kind of trying to have the same beats and banter that was making the characters in the first and second and third Scream pop a little bit more.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they're just retreading Scream 2 in this one. I mean, they're away at college, so it is following similar beats, and they're trying to shake it up a little bit, but, the ending is pretty similar to Scream 2. Yeah, so that kind of goes into a little bit of my gripes, but really quick before that, just to wrap up the opening scene, it's kind of fitting that the three of us are here, because it felt so much like Friday the 13th Part 2's opening, where he's, like, walking around the apartment, looking for something, and then we find the head in the freezer. Did you guys get that at all?
Yes, I was thinking that, actually. I was like, as soon as I saw the fridge, I'm like, oh my god, he's going to find something in the fridge.
Oh, really good call. No, I don't think I immediately thought of Friday the 13th Part 2, but I do remember on that episode, I mentioned that the opening of Friday the 13th Part 2 is a lot like Scream with the phone call and even Alice's blonde bob. So this is all like a snake eating its tail.
Right, yeah. So anyway, so the killer, we find out, is not the guy who kills Samara Weaving. It's the real killer. So he's murdered the two new GhostFace. This is hard to explain, but the two pseudo GhostFace, Greg and somebody else, and they were going to finish Richie's movie from the first one. So we're assuming they know Richie somehow. I don't really know if they're friends or whatever. But then we get into the real movie, and this is where my first gripe starts. And Joe, I think you and I kind of talked about this a little bit, but dude, the fact that those core four or whatever are all at the same college on the other side of the country, just it's a little weird to me. And I mean, it was weird that Randy and Sydney were going to the same college, but this is like, come on, I don't know.
Yeah, tell you the truth, I didn't even give it much thought because I think it's such a it's just something that happens. Yeah, Randy and Sydney went to the same college in Scream 2. It's just kind of a movie cliche, and it didn't even occur to me. But while we're talking about the setting, let me just bring this up really quick. I knew this movie took place in New York City. I knew it wasn't shot there, and I was just wondering how that was going to be handled. That's always an interesting thing. They even have a Friday the 13th Part 8 reference in that opening scene.
That's right. They have it on the TV screen. Yeah.
Yep, it's on the TV, and that movie infamously was mostly shot in Canada, just like this one. And I was wondering how much that would stand out to me. And you guys have both spent a lot of time in New York as well. Can I just say that opening scene with Samara Weaving, you will be very hard pressed to find an alley like that in Manhattan. I mean, like, only movies that are not shot in New York but take place in New York have alleys like that.
Yeah. Dude, as a guy who publicly looks for places to pee in every city I go to, New York's one of the hardest ones, and I know for a fact you would not find an alley like that.
Well, at least they didn't try to film it in Times Square, or because they would have had to have a bigger budget, I suppose. Because that's basically what Friday the 13th Part 8 blew all their budget on. It's just like getting those shots in Times Square, getting Jason in like the middle of Times Square. That's basically where they spent all their money. So for this, it's like, oh, okay, no, we'll get it on the 72nd A train or something. They made a point to say, now getting off at 72nd, or showcasing the subway map on the inside of the subway. It's like, oh, they're showcasing little things that kind of try to indicate it being New York, which I thought was smart.
Yeah, and I got to say the subway scene, I'm sure we'll get to it when we get to it, but that was all done on like a soundstage, and that was really impressive.
I like that. Yeah, I thought that was really good, and they did make it look a lot like in New York City, the interior. But yeah, that was really cool. They shot that. Question for you guys though, as New Yorkers or previous New Yorkers, how often do you guys see paramedics just ready to go, waiting at a subway station, like when somebody gets stabbed? Like I'd never seen a paramedic that quick.
Never.
Yeah, no, can't say that I did.
There's cops always, but like there's never paramedics though.
I don't know. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So then basically we get reintroduced to all of the characters. We get to see Sam and Tara. They're living together with this girl Quinn. They're all at college in a dorm, I think, or an apartment. No, an apartment. Sam, which is kind of funny, which it goes back to Scream 5 a little bit. Sam basically is branded as the murderer from Scream 5, right? It's like she's the one, like they accomplished their goal, Richie and Amber or whatever, of pinning it on the daughter of Billy Loomis, and the internet actually believes them. So that was cool. That was different. So it was almost like they actually, because every single time they always have, they try to pin it on somebody. I mean, they're gonna basically, you know, be like, oh, it was your dad, Sidney, who killed all these people, like, you know, to get revenge. They always have or some sort of alibi, basically. This one, or not this one, but the fifth one, they actually got away with it, kind of. So that was yeah, interesting, a little different.
I actually thought that was pretty clever, and just something that I can see happening in real life. Like, I was actually rewatching Scream 5 a couple of nights ago, and you know, that ending, they all kind of go into overkill at the end when either Sidney or Sam, you know, has their go at the killer. I mean, Sam must stab Richie, I don't know, 20 times, and then she slits his throat and shoots him at the head. I might have turned to my wife and said, isn't this going to be a little hard to, you know, explain to the cops? Like, I mean, so, you know, even thinking back, you know, all the, you know, the murders that Sydney found herself, you know, involved in this day and age, there would most definitely be all kinds of conspiracy theories going on. I thought that was pretty clever.
I will say that in this one, I kind of started pinning that for technical reasons, that the killer was going to be the cop because of his voice. Like, I heard it, I'm like, wow, he sounds exactly like Roger L. Jackson. And I'm like, they don't have the voice box anymore, and he sounds like him. I'm like, that was kind of going to be my main bet, because I know everybody was thinking Hayden Panettiere, because it's like she just shows up and she's, you know, she's FBI, but then there's the whole thing of like, oh, she got let go from the FBI. But I'm like, but his voice, it sounds so much like Roger L. Jackson that I just couldn't stop thinking of that, you know, this voice emulator whenever I heard his voice.
But yeah, they both do have like a smoky kind of, dark, deeper voice. Yeah, I don't think, they had the voice box in this one, though. They were, a lot of people sounded like him, didn't they?
I didn't see a voice box at all.
Huh. How did they get Ghostface voice?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't ever see them when they're on the other side of the phone.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Huh. Yeah, this is another kind of one of my gripes, though. So, Tara and Sam, they are living with Quinn, who's Richie's sister, and then, Chad. So Chad is living with Richie's other brother, and then the dad or whatever, he transfers as a police officer here. So, like, there's nobody making any connections. Like, like, you'd think that people would know that these people are targets, basically, because of, like, this franchise and, like, the lore of what's going on. So you think the school would do a little bit more research and being like, okay, like, why are you both, I don't know, like, requesting these people? Like, I don't know. Did that raise any flags for you guys? Just, like, how convenient it all kind of worked out?
You know, I haven't even begun to kind of piece together or consider all of the plot and the motives and how the killers worked certain things out. I haven't even really begun to consider that. I'm more just kind of still dealing with my overall kind of impression and how this movie made me feel. I'm still kind of struggling with that. And I almost kind of was starting to zone out when they started going into their villain monologue at the end. I was just like, it's Scream 2. It's another parent revenge plot, which was kind of disappointing because, you know, going into this, you know, I didn't really give too much thought about, you know, who the killer would be or what their motives would be. But in the trailer, there's a moment where the killer is saying, there's never been one like me or something like that. And, you know, I thought, you know, well, what could that mean? And I guess it just means that there's 3 of them this time.
Yeah, it was a little weak.
I mean, this is part of why I thought that there was too much going on in between the kills. I was just sort of like, I got to the point where I literally was rooting for Ghostface. I'm like, come on, get him, get her, go, get her, now. Like, even with Courtney Cox, I was just sort of like, she's old, she's weak, get her.
Andy, I know. I heard you rooting for Ghostface to kill Gale, and I was like, no, not Gale. I was like, yeah, kill all these other people, not Gale. That was the one thing I was a little upset about. But you know, Joe, you're right though. Like I am getting a little bit into the nitty gritty, and I've only seen it once, so I really need to watch it again now, knowing who the killers are. But you're right. We should focus on kind of more of our just like impressions because I don't know. I don't remember enough.
How did you guys feel about Sydney not being in this?
Surprisingly okay. Because if they're gonna work something out. Eventually they will, because they have to end her story or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I would have liked it if she was there, but I wasn't completely like, this movie sucks because she's not in it. I don't know. What did you think?
Well, it's funny. When I heard that they were making a Scream 6, I didn't even think they were going to bring back Sydney and Gale. I just thought that the torch had been successfully passed and it was time for them to just go off and kind of have a happy ending. And I thought those characters kind of deserved that. And to tell you the truth, I don't really think Gale has much purpose to be here besides just having her here. I actually think the scene with her, you know, her attack by Ghostface is actually a pretty intense scene. I think it's a good scene, but other than that, I'm not really sure why she's here. And I honestly don't want her to die. I just feel like her and Sydney, if they've made it this far. And I guess I'm going to kind of touch base on my biggest problem with this movie, which is if the makers of this movie are too precious about their own characters, too unwilling to kill their own characters, then you know what? You don't get to kill Gale. I was fine with them killing Dewey in the last movie. I think, his number was up. It was his time. The movie needed to have those stakes. But with this movie, I really feel like they were pulling their punches, and this movie just isn't mean enough when it needs to be. And really, Andy, this is what I was saying earlier when you were talking about stakes when we were walking out of the theater. I think you really nailed it. But I kind of went way off track. Andy, if you want to talk about how you how you feel about Sydney not being in here, we could backtrack a bit.
I agree. I mean, I think you said it well with stakes, because I mean, I think if Sydney were in it, then those still, people would have been hinged on the fact like, oh, Sydney's in it, Neve Campbell's in it, and maybe the writers would have thought, oh yeah, but now nobody's paying attention to the main characters at all. So I understand not having her in the movie for that purpose as far as story mechanics go. And yeah, I mean, as far as stakes are concerned, the fact that there's no consequences at all that occur from any of Ghostface's attack with like the initial legacy characters, which is why I kind of wanted Courtney Cox to get it, because I'm like, oh, stakes. Oh, something actually happened, It's like somebody, this actually had a ripple effect. It's like, no, Gail's gone and people liked her and cared about her and she's never coming back again. And, that would have made people, affected people, say, as opposed to just, thinking, oh yeah, they're going to survive somehow. Oh yeah, they're going to come back. Oh yeah, something's going to happen. Like, I think it would have heightened it a little bit more for me. And plus, I have to say, watching Courtney Cox run from Ghostface, looking like a yoga grandmother in like her sportswear and her yoga pants, she was like, goes from running slow to all of a sudden cuts of her stunt double, just like flat out body checking Ghostface. And I'm like, oh my God, you are old, Grandma. He's gonna get you, Grandma. Come on, just give up already. That's me. That's terrible of me, but that was what I was thinking when I was, watching her try to run away from Ghostface.
I'm so glad you said the word consequence, because yeah, that's it. Like, there are people that survive just being absolutely brutalized in this movie, and I really wonder how Wes Craven would feel about that. And I would never want to speak for the man, but I've talked a lot in other episodes how he battled with the MPAA, including on the first Scream, over cuts to violence in his movies. And the way he always felt about it was by trimming the the violent moments, you're robbing the movie of its consequence. You should see the consequences of violence. And I just wonder how he would feel if he saw this and people are actually being gutted and they're just fine. They're just running around in the next scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I feel like we really need to kind of get into these characters and like the ones that are surviving and why they're surviving and
Why they're surviving is yes, them surviving is a symptom of a greater issue that that I want to get into in due time.
So they can be in the next movie. That's why they survive.
You're exactly right. And let's just get into it now. I feel like this movie, there's a bit of marvelization happening. Like, and they even call it out in the movie during the rules scene. Like every Scream movie has a rules scene. And I was really wondering how they were going to handle that in this movie. Like, you know, because they usually talk about how horror has changed in those scenes. And it's only been a year since the last movie. But what Mindy says is that the Stab franchise, it's a franchise, it's an IP, and IPs are, you know, more concerned about, yes, the next movie. And if you've seen like many Marvel movies or Fast and Furious movies, you know, characters are pretty much invincible, or if they do die, they'll be back in the next movie. And even seeing this movie with this, you know, packed, lively audience, they were like cheering every time like Kirby showed up, or like a legacy character would show up. It felt like an Avengers movie, and it was just odd. I'm not going to say it's bad. I'm going to say it's a strange shift that they're moving towards. I don't know. Did you guys feel that?
oh yeah, big time.
I got a hint. I definitely got a hint of that. I don't think they were leaning fully into that, but I definitely got that hint though.
Yeah, no. I feel like they're tiptoeing in that direction. And look, you know, that's just the way the industry is changing. I was 14 when the first Scream movie came out. I'm 40 now, you know, so like I'm not even in the demographic for these movies anymore. So obviously, you know, things are going to change. I just don't know how I feel about it quite yet.
I mean, there was, to be fair, the attempt at this was done years ago when they had Freddy versus Jason. You know, they already were trying to kind of initiate a cinematic universe. So if they were to attempt that again, I actually would probably pay money to see Ghostface versus Jason versus Freddy versus Michael Myers. Like, just have it be a full-out Merkins parody video and just have the four of them kind of like, you know, be facing off Avengers style against human beings. You know, it's like they treat the human beings like aliens, and you just see the four of them kind of being like an Avengers, and then all of a sudden each movie introduces like Pinhead from Hellraiser, or the Hookman from I Know What You Did Last Summer. Slowly but surely they build up to be like an Avengers, and then you have Friday the Scream Nightmare Endgame.
Oh god.
Yeah. I mean, look, like I have followed these franchises into some very strange places over the years. I mean, like Jason to space and Michael with cults and Freddy in Hollywood. Like these franchises have gone to very strange places, and that's not really my issue. My issue is feeling like everything is very like focus grouped. You know, that's what I worry about when I say it's kind of becoming a bit marvelized, because I feel like these characters don't die because they're worried what Twitter is going to say, you know, or that's what worries me, if that makes any sense.
It definitely does. It's because we need one of these characters to die for us to feel like this actually matters. I mean, Randy died in the second one. That was a big deal. I mean, I remember you talking about it, Joe, when we did Scream 2. Like, you and your friends were really upset because that was like, you saw yourself in that character getting killed.
We gasped in the theater.
Right.
You know, and that gave Sydney cause for revenge. Like, you know, that's, and we thought Dewey was dead in Scream 2, and that gave Gail cause for revenge. So, like, you just need these things to happen. I think overall, just kind of horror in general, there's a lot of good horror movies now, but I think horror in general is not as mean as it should be or has been in the past. And I feel like having a lot of kind of over the top cartoonish violence, I think some of these modern filmmakers think that is just as good when it's not. Like, this movie is brutal and gory, but I feel like it doesn't hit you as hard as even some of the much simpler deaths in the first Scream.
It hurts its own movie because this seems like the most intense Ghostface there's ever been, yet more people survive the most brutal attacks. So it really makes it feel like, okay, well, the next one, they're going to have to even do it more intense, and we're just not going to believe these are people anymore. They're superheroes. I just want to talk about these characters really quick, the ones that do survive. And I want to ask you guys, of these 4 characters, which one do you think should have died? We get the twins. We get Mindy surviving a stab in the gut by herself on the subway, like really gutted there. We get the brother of her twin brother, who survived an insane assault in the 5th one. We're like, okay, he's definitely dead. Whatever, he's back. Then in this one, he gets 2 ghost faces stabbing him at the same time. And then they do that awesome, where they wipe their blades in unison, which is like the coolest shot of the movie. That guy still survives, okay? Gale obviously gets mutilated with all this glass and stabbed and blah, blah, blah. And then Kirby gets shot, okay? One of them had to go. Oh, and Tara! Jesus Christ! How many times is Tara gonna get stabbed and then lands on a knife after falling off, like, whatever, 20 feet onto a knife? So of those 5 characters, someone's gotta go. Who do you guys think?
I will say, I hope they all got their tetanus shots first off, because, they're bound to get an infection if they don't do something about those cuts soon enough. As far as who should have gone, I think it was most likely that Mindy probably should have gone because of where she was situated, how she was killed, and where we were left with her after she was killed. That's my vote.
Yeah, I mean, any of them. But for me, it was Chad. I mean, yeah, I lost count of how many times he was stabbed, and I thought that would have been appropriately just kind of a dark turn for this movie to take, because he is starting to have this romantic relationship with Tara, and for him to be killed right in front of her, like, that's what I'm talking about. Then Tara could pick up a knife and fucking go after these guys. Like, you need moments like that. So yeah, my vote is for him, but somebody.
Dude, same as you, Joe. It should have been Chad, because then, yeah, Tara would have wanted to been like, I'm ending this legacy. And then and it would have added such weight to that. Remember when she's like shitting on Sam and she's just like, you're a fucking loser, like you work 2 shitty jobs, I'm gonna be somebody, I'm gonna do this. Then her boyfriend gets killed because of this. That would have added so much depth to her character. And then, okay, Mindy survives, fine, she gets stabbed and she survives. She would have been like, we're getting revenge on my brother, we're ending this. Like, that could have fucking gone.
Yeah, okay.
I'm so mad.
Yeah. And there's something kind of disturbing or dark about, like, one half of a twin being killed, like, that would have been a great place for her to want to seek revenge, and even interesting stuff for her to deal with in a sequel. I mean, like, in Scream 2, Sydney's roommate and boyfriend get executed right in front of her. Like, Scream 2 is fun, but it still knows when to be mean. And Wes Craven knew when he needed to be mean. And these guys don't. They're more worried about, like, #Core4.
Dude, fuck yeah. It's not even about it's not even about the people get killed. It's about how the survivors deal with it. So now they have nothing to deal with. They're like, well, we all got away with it again, just like last time. It's like, fucking who cares? What, are you guys gonna go to grad school together now and do the same fucking thing? I was so mad, dude. So mad about that. I'm sorry.
They're gonna get their PhDs in GhostFace. GhostFace studies.
Gale, though, 100% didn't need to be in this movie, and I actually think it hurt her character having her come back and being, like, she didn't, like, learn anything from the past. She wrote a book that didn't defend Sam and what happened, so then, they're like, they punch her in the face, repeating the thing from Scream 2, and you're just like, oh, God. All right, I'm sorry. I'm getting worked up now.
No, it's totally justifiable.
Yeah, no, I've been waiting a couple days to get some of this stuff out, but I do want to, we're being a little hard on the movie. I think there is some good stuff here. Like, I think the scene where, they're trying to cross a ladder from one apartment building to the other, I think that's one of the best set pieces of the series. Like, I was on the edge of my seat. I thought that was great.
Yes.
Agreed.
That was sick. The bodega scene, kind of loved it. Kind of like, because I was like, oh, Ghostface isn't gonna, like, do anything in public, and then I was like, oh shit, he killed like 3 people and took a shotgun. Weird to see him with a gun, but whatever.
I love the shots where Ghostface is always kind of flying in like an actual ghoul. Like they actually shot him from above, whereas like he's jumping down and you don't see his legs. You just see like the frittered edges of his robe. So it kind of felt like he was an actual ghoul slash ghost kind of like swooping in. I loved those shots a lot.
Yeah, that was cool.
And I also think that the ladder scene was also pretty cool. And I was waiting for him to get to the ladder. And I'm like, come on, get to the ladder. Get to the ladder.
Did either of you guys? So there is a death in that scene. Mindy's girlfriend. So she gets straight up gutted. Did any of you guys think when she was crawling on the ladder that her intestines were going to fall out, or is that just me?
Dude, because of all the pressure, like, yeah, 100% it should have happened. Like, you're done. You're done. But yeah, unfortunately, her face gets busted open on a dumpster. Yeah.
I mean, it ends just as brutally. I'm not complaining.
Yeah. I thought it would have been hilarious if they had somebody actually in the alley below the ladder, and like you said, if her guts were falling out, he was just standing there, picks up a penny, he's like, "Ooh, a penny," but then all of a sudden, like a spleen falls on him. It's like, "Wait, what is this?" And then like the intestinal tract falls on him. Like, what? Where the hell did this come from? Then all of a sudden he looks up, and she falls on him completely, and her organs are just scattered around him. Be like, what? How did this happen? Where did this come from?
Another day in New York.
If they ever resurrect the Scary Movie franchise, I think that would be perfect.
There you go. They probably will now because of how popular horror's getting again. But yeah, so I want to think of another positive. Obviously, I'm happy Gail survived. That was cool. Kirby coming back. Interesting. I was happy she came back. I kind of felt she was a little underutilized, though. I wanted to see more about her. Also, how was she so able to casually sneak into the FBI or whatever? It's like, yeah, she got let go 2 months ago, but she just, like, figured it out. I don't know. Good for her, though.
Especially in those heel boots, I'm like, those heel boots are high. And also, all those snaps on her jacket. I'm like, wow. I don't think she could hide a gun in the snap sleeves at all, because I'm like, she can't pull any like James Bond type of stuff where all of a sudden she just, cocks a gun out of her sleeve. I'm like, she's got to, keep everything properly placed. So she'd actually have to reach behind her jacket or something. Or like, basically has limited options on where she could carry her guns. So that's what I thought, was that she's dressed pretty impractically for an FBI agent. She needs looser sleeves and like longer clothes and bigger clothes to carry more weapons under to be concealed.
Yeah, she was. It seems like you were really interested in her looks, Andy. Ooh.
What can I say? I noticed the female form. Don't deny it. You also noticed, how actresses in slasher movies tend to be hotter.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. I appreciated her for her personality and her brains as well.
I'm kidding. But Joe, what did you think about Kirby coming back? She's, I guess, the first time a survivor besides the core three have ever really come back.
Yeah, it was cool to see her. She didn't make a huge impression on me. In all honesty, she didn't really make a huge impression on me in Scream 4. I know apparently she's kind of a fan favorite, but nothing against her. But she didn't steal the show for me. I'll say that.
Right. Well, maybe in Scream 7 she's coming back. Speaking of Scream, actually, well, maybe. Do you guys have any kind of last minute thoughts before we wrap up here? Because I did want to get into my theories. I have a bunch of theories for Scream 7.
I guess for me, my biggest thought was, again, I think I was kind of able to peg it was going to be the cop that was the killer just because of his voice alone. Because we never saw a voice box or anybody putting anything in front of a phone. I just heard he had like that raspy, smoky thing going on. And I'm like, he could clearly do and I'm like, if he wanted to, he could do an impression of it. So I think that for me, that was kind of a giveaway, but that's just my opinion though.
Joe, you got any thoughts?
Going back to that opening scene one more time, there's this kind of exchange when Samara Weaving is on the phone with her killer, and she's a professor at the college who teaches a course on slasher movies. And she talks about slasher movies being outsider art, which I thought was interesting. And, being a horror fan my whole life, horror movies for most of my life really did kind of feel like outsider art. And I'm not really sure they do anymore. And I'm not really sure this movie feels like outsider art. And that's kind of what I'm bumping into. And I do feel like they're only kind of tiptoeing in more kind of a mainstream direction. So I'm just really hoping they don't go there full on, if that makes any sense. So overall, again, I'm pretty positive on the movie. And what I love even more than these most recent Scream movies is just kind of the time leading up to Scream movies, because I just find myself rewatching the old movies and rewatching other slasher movies, checking out ones that I hadn't seen before, texting my friends that I saw the original trilogy with, and it brings back all these memories. So overall, this experience has been a lot of fun. I feel like I want to end on a positive note.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I always kind of get nitpicky with stuff. I should focus on the positives more.
No, trust me, I wanted to.
No, but I really enjoyed seeing with you guys. I don't really get as excited about any horror movies as I do for Scream, because I always am like, there's gonna be a big surprise. They're probably gonna trick me, and there's really no other slasher movies that do that. So that's part of the experience. It's just being like, who's gonna be the killer, and it always gets me. So I love that. But yeah, this one was good. Maybe my expectations were too high because the fifth one was such a surprise hit for me. But I do have some pretty interesting theories on the seventh one, and I want to know what you guys think. So I thought they were going to do this for this one, but they didn't. So I was like, yes, cool. Maybe they'll do this for the seventh one. What if there were 2 or even 4, so like 2 pairs of ghost faces that were actively trying to do their own thing at the same time without the other 2 knowing? So I'm like imagining a scene where like 2 ghost face come in at the same time and they kind of see each other and they're completely thrown off, sort of thing. I thought that would be like a really cool idea to introduce multiple ghost face theories happening at the same time, using the same core 4 and Sydney and all this stuff all at the same time. I don't know what you guys think of that one.
I just started thinking of a Marx Brothers movie that when Groucho and Harpo are doing the mirror scene where one of them thinks the other is Groucho in disguise, and they're kind of trying to mimic each other because they think they're looking at a mirror. So I started thinking about that when you started talking about all the ghost face that exist, and they're like, wait, is this a mirror? Am I looking at myself? And then they're kind of trying to mimic each other's movement with the knife or the mask in front of what they think is a mirror. So all of a sudden I'm thinking like 4 ghosts faced,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden just like fighting against each other mirror style. I don't know. That was what I thought of.
No, I mean, that would be an interesting scene too, where he does think it's a mirror. That would be cool. Yeah.
I could definitely see it going in a direction like that. It is crazy, like in the reality of these movies, how many people just decide to say like, fuck it, I'm going to be a serial killer.
Yeah, it's like, I'm a really well-respected police officer. He's like, I'm throwing it away. Or Roman in the third one. It's like, dude, you have such a sick like career in Hollywood. He's like, fuck it. I don't even care. But yeah, so that another idea, I think they're going to have to bring Sydney's husband into it, or maybe her kids. I think they might get involved. I also want to know, do we ever find out what happened to Mr. Loomis? Joe, did they ever talk about that?
No, not that I know of. I mean, we saw him briefly in the first Scream when Billy's being interrogated, and we see him briefly in Scream 3 when like Roman is playing some videos for Sydney, but no, they never really get into it. And just for the record, as far as Sydney goes, I'm like 100% team. Her story is over. Like I just feel like eventually the only thing to do with her is going to be to kill her, and I don't want to see that happen. Like she's just, for me, she's been through too much, and it's like, especially seeing the way Gail was handled in this movie, I think they should just kind of move on with these new characters.
I agree. I do. I don't want to see them die, but to be honest with you, though, I think it's kind of like this unfinished thing that's keeping this going. Because the only reason anybody cares about Sam and Tara now is because of Billy Loomis, and the only reason we care about Billy Loomis is because he tried to kill Sydney, and Sydney's still alive. So it's just like, I don't want to see it, but I feel like it needs to be wrapped up.
I want to see in the next movie Jason Voorhees be Ghostface, where he's wearing the Ghostface mask and the robes, and he's just like standing still, breathing heavily, and everyone's like, oh, you're supposed to be Ghostface, and they try to push him over, and then he just, instead of a knife, he uses a giant machete and like hacks him in two, and then he takes off his the Ghostface mask. He takes off his Jason mask, and then he puts the Ghostface mask back on and puts the hockey mask back over the Ghostface mask. I'm like, what a twist!
I will say this Ghostface is probably the most imposing and aggressive Ghostface we've had. He reminded me much more of like a Jason or a Michael Myers. He wasn't as good at his job as those guys are, but he was very intimidating.
He wasn't as goofy. We've talked about in the past, like how he's so like flimsy and trips over everything. This one wasn't like that because it was the cop, you know. So it's like he's a sturdy dude. He's probably the strongest one that they've ever had. Probably like a full-grown cop adult.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing it so sinister that I never really suspected him. Like it would have been too obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, also the boyfriend. We never talk about the Sam's like hot guy who lives across the street.
The neighbor, yeah.
He was fine. I just didn't understand the point of it if he wasn't going to get killed. But Danny is his name, yeah. He'll be in the next one, I'm sure.
He was very intense. He had a very intense presence, but I also am like, maybe he's like the point man for the phone calls. It's like, oh, they don't have a wide enough signal, so they have to bounce off his phone. And he's not doing any killing, but he's kind of just sort of like, oh, the call's not in the immediate vicinity, so thanks to his phone signal or Wi-Fi signal or whatnot, they can reach from farther, his voice can come from farther away. So he's like, actually, I was the point man. Something like that.
Oh, God, it starts getting like hot spots and stuff. Really quick before I forget, and we'll wrap up after this, but Joe, what do you think of the line where they're like, Stu Macher, if you believe he's dead?
I felt like it was another moment where they're just kind of playing to the fans a bit, which for me, kind of a little bit of that goes a long way because there's always this, these rumors that Stu is going to be the killer in this one. So I didn't really take it for much more than them, just this meta moment where they're kind of having a laugh with the fans. I don't know. What'd you think?
I don't know. Now I'm like, are they going to get desperate and have him be... That's what I was thinking for the seventh one. I'm like, what if Stu is like this Emperor Palpatine puppet master and he has multiple Ghostface and he's the one like, I'm the original one. Like, sort of, and he's like telling them what to do and they don't know who's telling... Like, he's like instructing various Ghostfaces to do his bidding sort of thing. I don't know. I'm going crazy now.
I mean, I'm of two minds. I'm of two minds about it because that's always just kind of the fan theory that Stu is going to be involved, and it's like, no, he's not. I mean, but at the same time, I would rather that than just some like, oh, you killed my son plot again. So who knows?
They're always outlandish.
That would be the J.J. Abrams version of Scream.
Stu Macher coming back? Yeah, right. Yeah, like at the ninth inning, you just get Palpatine. It's just like, God damn it. But I don't know. Overall, definitely see it. 100% there's going to be a seventh one. I just read that it is the most successful opening weekend of any Scream movie. So that's, okay, here we go. Definitely going to be another one.
Alec, if I may, so sorry to interrupt. I didn't really listen to our Scream 5 podcast, but I do remember on that episode, I made a prediction that we would get Scream 6 in 2023. I predicted in the fall. So they got it out like, 5 months before I even thought they were going to. So that's pretty impressive. Do we have any predictions when we're getting Scream 7?
I think 2025. I don't think they're going to do another one this soon because I think they're like, holy shit, we really struck gold twice. Like, maybe we should not try and go for 3 like immediately, but maybe they will. I don't know. I was wrong last time.
I think maybe they'll just try to follow the Friday the 13th model and just try to crank one out every year until they've made more than the Friday the 13th sequels or the Halloween sequels, because that's literally kind of what it was in the 80s. It's like there was almost a Friday the 13th coming out almost every year. So yeah. I'm thinking that they might be kind of trying to follow that model just because they've established a storyline that they technically, I guess, don't have to give too much exposition for anymore. So ultimately they should be like really just cutting to more of the action immediately and not having too much of the talkie in between everything.
I think they would love to get one out every year, just like the old days. But I feel like people like Jenna Ortega are so like insanely busy. Like I know she's going to do another season of Wednesday, so I'm sure she needs to squeeze that in. Yeah, I think 2025 at the earliest.
Yeah, geez, her career is exploding right now. Anyways, I guess this is it. Anybody got any last minute things before we wrap up? This is the final call.
I guess I'm wondering if, they'll keep things going after Roger L. Jackson is gone, and also when they're going to try to make him an AI voice. They'll try to synthesize his voice just so they can keep the Scream movies going after he dies. He is Ghostface, essentially.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't really talk about him too much in our other podcasts, Alec, and like he's kind of an unsung hero. I mean, talk about like the elements you need to make a proper Scream movie. I mean, his voice is right up there.
Yeah, no, it's essential. He's so good. I love his voice. Yeah, it's iconic. I think that's the right word. But all right, well, we did it. This is definitely the longest episode we've ever done, but I'm glad it was. We had a lot of, I was exploding to talk to you guys about this. I was texting you guys right after we left. I was like, do you guys want to record tonight? But I know, we have lives and stuff. But thank you all for listening in. Again, if you want to listen to our episodes on Screams 1 through 5, you can find those on Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. And if you haven't had a chance yet, we released our episode on Orphan. It came out on Monday. And then this upcoming Monday, Joe Testa's coming back for Funhouse. So get ready for that. And thank you, Andy, and thank you, Joe.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you on Monday.